You all very much for inviting me here. My name is Sudeshna. I'm from India, and greetings from India to all the participants who are in this conference and who have also virtually logged in. What I'm going to share today is not really telling about what we should do about urban lighting, but certain research which has been going on in various aspects, which basically tells us to be a little more alert and little more sensitive because it is time to usher in urban darkness. Uh, so there is an urban puzzle, so we have to continuously balance between economic growth, safety, well being, and definitely ecology. When we talked about urban lighting a few years ago, in fact, even a decade ago, it was all about how urban lighting was fostering economic growth and safety. Over the years, especially in the recent years, we realize that lighting and even urban lighting, the impact on well-being and ecology is not restricted only to indoor spaces, it is also for the urban spaces. So it is for designers, the manufacturers, the policy makers to now address this in totality and fix this puzzle in terms of growth, safety, well-being, and ecology. The entire country for the last 2 years, the world, we know what has happened because of COVID. It's gone beyond life losses, and this has been only one what you can say an incident which has had such global impact. Every one of us have been impacted, whether it has been losing friends, family members, or losing jobs. There has been disruptions in all aspects. But during the time of COVID, when restrictions were put in place in terms of mobility, in terms of usage of public resources, in terms of usage of personal resources, in India, we saw two beautiful things happening. India is a country where we are struggling a lot with pollution, and that pollution is mostly due to urban air pollution. During the times of COVID, we did see that, when there were a lot of regulation in terms of people and public transport movement, the sky changed from as far as Delhi and Punjab, which is the northern part of India, the Himalayas, which flank the northernmost and northeastern part of India, were visible even from the cities. We could see the snow clad peaks even during daytimes. In a city like Mumbai, which is one of the most densely populated city in the world, the night sky became visible. So it was very clear that the pattern of consumption which the urban people were getting used to, by the years, COVID, when it stopped us from, consuming and behaving in our normal patterns, which we were used to in the last 10 years or no, nature became available to us in bounty. So these are some of the cautionary areas or the good part which came, that if we are able to respect the way we consume and the way we really, behave in our urban spaces, the nature will be much more giving us in bounty. So my presentation today, we have seen that there has been impact of overconsumption, extreme weather events. When we started looking at urban lighting and focusing only on economic growth or making the cities being alive, we also saw extreme, what you can say, manifestation of these, which resulted in impact not only on our eyes, that they were not good to look at, but over usage of light also impacted weather events. We've seen heat waves, droughts, and floods, and there was profound impact on human life and immunity as well. And I'm going to deal with this a little later. The sky, which was so clear during the COVID times, during the normal urban times when you had overlighting, you see what happened to this sky. Everything was blurred. So the basis of my presentation are two very interesting research events. One is by Gensler Research, Impact of Affordability of Remote Work and Personal Safety on Urban Life. This report is in spring 2022, so which is very, very recent. And also a report sorry, by Artificial Lighting at Night by the International Dark Sky Association. This report was released very recently in 2022, just about a month ago. So two very recent research report, and that is what I'm going to base my presentation on. I'm just going to take some of these research findings. So cities have become a new stage for how we live now. So it is a very important juncture as we are struggling to come out of the impact of COVID that we need to rebalance our life and recalibrate our urban lives as well. That what was only focused on probably, attracting people to stay outdoors and which was more only connected to urban growth or economic growth, maybe we need to recalibrate that. There are interesting findings out of this Gensler research. The Gensler research says that people with the ability to have hybrid work, they only 26% of them are recommending that their city is a great place to live and work. Interestingly, if you see some of the Asian cities, while 65% of Bangalore people, which is a city in India, the IT hub of India, recommends that they responded that they would like to continue living in the city for working. There are many Asian cities like Singapore and Tokyo who say that they would not like to recommend their cities for working anymore. So they would like to move out of their cities. So this basically throws up a very important question that do we need to redesign our city with people as its core? If people want to move out of the city, where is the attraction of economic growth? So it is now an opportunity to take positively in the urban experience and look at how we are going to redesign the city post this pandemic. It is not post, this is going to be part of a life. Maybe there are going to be more open streets, more outdoor areas, fewer cars, and we have to see how we are going to connect with nature. So it is not about only hardware planning of this city. Every utility, we have to keep health and wellness as our key priority. Interestingly, in the Gensler research as well, it says that work will not be the primary driver in bringing people back to their business district. So it's just not about only restaurants or looking at monuments. So one of the important part or one of the most important attractive point was visiting parks. So more and more people would like to connect to nature in their cities. So when we are talking about what is the life after night, earlier we were all talking about economic growth around restaurants or shop. Of course shopping is still high, but visiting parks have become the second most important area. So this is a survey which is released in spring 2022. So this is very, very relevant. Interestingly, one of the other reasons about not wanting to be in the city is 1/3 of the urban residents do not feel safe in their cities. Asian respondents feel more unsafe in their cities other than the other racial group. So if I'm looking at the new age cities, we are talking about more, connect to the green areas, and we are talking about increased feel of security. So it is really a time to relook and recalibrate our city area. Concurrently, while the urban lighting as an activity became very popular in the last 2 decades, we also saw that unplanned and uncontrolled light had serious and severe impact. You see, the skies completely started disappearing. Also, in the last decade, the rise of solid state lighting has threatened the dark sky. We are seeing below over here in the left hand image that how Asian cities are becoming so much more bright than what it is needed, including the country from where I come from, India, where there is an enormous rural area. We have access to electricity issue, we have access to lighting issue, but cities which have access to lighting are becoming overlit, and this is becoming a big threat. Why it is becoming a big threat? Because the study, if you see now, we have known it all along that this is becoming a threat. My erstwhile colleague and a big friend, Bike, talked about light pollution. This is now getting substantiated with more research. The International Dark Sky Association research now clearly talks about how, there is a lot of research which is done, and there are conclusive studies on how artificial lighting at night, which we call as ALAN, is impacting not only human beings but plants and night. The lowest lighting levels in an urban area, even if you're talking about 10 lux, this is much higher than what is there for natural lighting. So plants and animals who are supposed to breed and thrive at much lower lighting level under moonlight and starlight is seriously impeded. There is very high impact on birds because they are very sensitive not only about the quantity of light but also about the polarization of the light. And there is a research which is now also proving that when these animals are getting subjected to this higher level of urban light, they are decreasing their fitness for preying and hunting. When this happens, it is going to severely impact the food chain, and that is something which we have to be really worried about. So the common street lighting and street color is one of the biggest influencers on how we are going to address this issue. We do know the light melatonin connection. There are enough researches which are there in terms of how lighting impacts our human health, and I'm not going to really talk about that. And we know that there is increased exposure to blue spectrum with this LEDification. Of course, Korea mentioned that they are moving to lower color spectrum, but that is still not true for the other Asian countries in particular, because the government there is very, very sold on efficiency and therefore their affinity towards the bluer spectrum color. But there is a now research which epidemiological studies show that there is a strong correlation between artificial lighting at night and the incidence of breast and prostate cancer. So if you go through this report, this very intensive report of International Dark Sky Association, you will see all these reports in disease. What is very interesting are two research papers. The two research papers also connects the rising growth of this outdoor lighting to this COVID-19 issues. So this is a research paper which can also be downloaded. It is also available in the public forum, and it is part of the documentation of the artificial light at night study itself. there is a component of artificial light which connects to COVID. And why is that? Because this picture of Wuhan from 2012 to 2019, just see the amount of light, which is there during the, in the night hours. It says that the studies says that because of this extra light or this additional light or unwanted light, bats and nocturnal nature reservoir, which actually is a propagand of this coronavirus, are heavily affected by the artificial light, and their proper habit and habitat was destructed. Probably this is one of the reason which also caused this, humongous coronavirus effect. So there are two research studies which basically connects the extra or this additional lighting at night to the coronavirus itself. So this has now become so much important that as urban planners, and I think LUCI now should also start talking about a darkness strategy beyond the lighting strategy. For all these last 20-25 years, we have been talking about more about lighting strategy. We have started talking about darkness strategy, but I think that needs to go more, because lighting will continue to be a key pivot in the ensuring the economic growth. By this presentation, I am not propagating that cities will turn dark after sunset. That is not the intent of my presentation. I'm talking about responsibility. How do we balance a living city with a dark sky? More and more designers have now started talking about designing darkness. In the last few slides, by which I'm going to conclude my presentation, I'm going to just share some work of the leading designers globally, where they have really relooked into the design techniques, the product selection techniques which are promoting dark sky. So the future, when we talk about urban cities, we are going to talk about lit cities, we are going to talk about living cities, but we are also going to talk about dark cities. And why is this time very important? Because the technology is here. We have entered the digital lighting. It is so easy to control light intensity. It is easy to control light spectrum. It is also easy to control light distribution, so that you do not need to, earlier conventional light sources probably had light in all the direction. But now with much collimated light beams, we can control the light distribution. If we apply all these principles well, we will be having much more rejuvenated cities which are ecological sensitive and which are ecological respectful. And also, when we are talking about standards, we need to look at standards beyond lighting levels, because that dominates all lighting regulations and recommendations. I think in indoor standards, we are now talking about human-centric lighting. It has got integrated as part of even European norms. Similarly, overlighting or controlling artificial lighting at night needs to get integrated also in the urban lighting policies and recommendations. Smart cities is there. It is basically applying technology. But we should apply technology responsibly so that we are able to create darkness. And here are certain installations I would like to share, which some of the leading designers have, realized over the last few years, where they are now promoting much more, natural lighting and the question of urban darkness. This is not only from India, but also from globally, which I have sourced from the public forum. This is an installation in China where you would see beautiful grazing lights have been used. This is from a study by Arab Lighting, where probably we are going to relook at, street lighting in a different way, where probably the vehicles themselves will be, lit objects by itself, and we may not need to light up streets the way we light up now. So it is a question that when we're talking about intelligent technologies, it is not about only related to lighting, But also we will have to see that, when all the technologies are changing, we are talking about driverless cars, we are talking about different types of mobility. Will street light poles remain relevant in the future? There are already certain, let's say, study works which are done on robotics, drones, and bioluminescence, multiple sensor based lighting, where lights can follow traffic movement. Maybe we do not need to really have, lighting poles, which are also one of the source. When you light up from high above, it also causes light spill, and especially upward light spill, maybe that is going to be there. This is an interesting illustration from very well-renowned Roger Narboni's website itself, where he talks about portable lighting. You don't need to keep, lighting all over and permanently throughout the night. And here, this is a concept of bioluminescence lighting itself, and drones being used for lighting, which senses people movement and car movement and can follow you itself. So in summary, we are not going to light only for, urban space by itself, but lighting for people and all living organisms will be the key driver in urban lighting. Urban darknesses will assume an important space as in urban lighting. And when we talk about smart lighting, it's not about only applying technology, it is also about using it responsibly. With this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you all for dialing in.